Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lunch with Stormy. It's a Liberty edition. We have two remarkable women as our guests today, Jen Boulden and Amanda Steinberg. These ladies are wildly successful, dedicated to social change, and their accomplishments are vast. They are both massive business builders. Jen created Ideal Bite, a company dedicated to light green living, and 3 years later, it was acquired by the Walt Disney Company. Amanda founded Daily Worth, a startup focused on women's financial prosperity. 8 years later, it was acquired by Her Money Media. They have 20 years of experience building business, political campaigns, digital platforms, email lists, and progressive movements that have impacted millions. In early 2020, they joined forces to launch Hire You, a company whose mission is to empower social change leaders with the training and the tools needed to galvanize their moments to advance us toward a more just, humane world. Separately, they're exceptional. Together, they're a dream team. There's going to be a lot to savor over this lunch, so please help me welcome Amanda and Jen. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And I'm inspired by each of you, and you've done a little bit. That introduction actually could have gone on for about 20 minutes, honestly. But first, I want to just ask where you guys are each calling from.
I'm calling in from Santa Barbara County, the winemaking side.
Oh, I love that. And then Amanda, where are you today?
I am in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, a beautiful town outside of Philadelphia.
Wow. And how are you each doing with COVID? Have you each been quarantined for, 7 months like myself?
Sort of. I mean, obviously we just do what we can without losing our minds. And then, like you mentioned, we are raising children. And so there's the homeschooling aspect. And we're entrepreneurs that have always worked from home for quite a bit. So in a way, we were built for this.
That's great. Well, I hope everybody is well and safe. And that homeschooling thing is super tricky. My son is living with me, and because he's working full time and he has two children, and they are going 50% of the time. They just started back to school, which is still scary. Their school's had an outbreak. So then they come home for 2 weeks, and it's been, a time. And I'm really glad that I'm around to be able to help them, but kudos to both of you.
And you.
Yeah. When your dining room table turns into your school desks.
Well, I'm in an office that is basically a garden shed because my children have taken over the house. So I would love a dining room table. You can.
Well, it's so tricky. More adaptability for you guys. So I want to talk about just a little bit about your early careers before we jump into current day. And you've both been extremely bold leaders. You've been able to monetize yourselves while affecting social change, which is phenomenal. And Jen, in your early career, you began Ideal Bite.
Yes.
Which is, can you talk about that? Because you also received a green MBA from George Washington University. And I wanted you to explain what a green MBA is.
Yeah.
I still don't know.
Sure. So Ideal Bite was a daily email that basically helped people go green. And we say it's kind of like the light green living media source. And so people that didn't exactly know what to do or sell their house and live in a yurt, that wasn't a possibility. They could just do one small green thing a day. And it was basically infotainment, right? So very kind of entertaining and also a lot of information and educational so they could do their thing. I got a green MBA because, quite frankly, I didn't want to start at the bottom after a successful kind of marketing and technology career, but knowing that I wanted to shift my trajectory into doing well by doing good. And I basically did one of those kind of corny things and just was like, okay, told the universe, right? If this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens, I will go back to school. And those three things did happen. And so I was like, all right, here I go. And basically it's an MBA that focuses on environmental policy and management. It was one of the 3 accredited programs in the United States at the time. Now there are more. It's not as, niche. And it was a great experience. And it did help me, I think, establish the congruence that was needed between, doing well and doing good for the world, right? Like there's the nonprofit world, and my hat's off to them. But I really wanted to use the power of capitalism because it's such a mighty force to do good things for the world. And so that's why we started Ideal Bite, was to be an example of that.
And I think that's a good message too, is because it is really hard to go full green. It's like, it's not easy to start integrating things into our life in that way when the regular day of everything we've been taught for decades really hasn't been that green, you know? So I love that you can just do it in bite-sized chunks.
Exactly.
And then Amanda, kind of the same question. You're a graduate of Columbia University with a degree in urban studies, but what was your path to daily worth?
Well, I majored in urban studies because my goal at the time was to become mayor of Philadelphia. But at the end of college, I discovered what was called, social ventures, which were for-profit businesses that ultimately are driven by their missions first. And I was like, well, isn't that brilliant? They don't have to be mutually exclusive. You don't have to have the martyr syndrome where you're just kind of scraping together money any which way you can. You can use sales and technology and profit to drive change. And so I ran digital agencies for many years because I didn't know what my thing was. I was always obsessed with figuring out what is the way I can have the biggest impact on the world. And when I discovered in my late 20s, this idea that our sophistication with money is possibly associated with our gender, it just infuriated me. And when I dug into and saw the delineation between how financial services companies were advertising to men, but not women, even more infuriated. And I thought, I need to create a sophisticated platform for professional women that is all about money at scale and bridge this gap. And so I spent 10 years in the middle of a really interesting conversation and shift as women are inheriting 2/3 of our nation's wealth and creating the biggest brand around this in a way that had previously been seen as not possible.
Phenomenal and worthy. I think in the VC world, anytime raising money, the percentage that actually go to women-based businesses has been extremely small, like in the single digits. Yeah. And I don't know if it's reaching close to 10, but it's like 3%.
Yeah, it was 2% about 10 years ago when we were raising money. We did VC as well.
It's pretty crazy. So kudos to you for doing that. I'll be calling you later to manage my stuff.
No problemo.
That would be amazing. And so you guys met in 2009, is that right? Two of you?
It was 2011. I stalked Jen and cold called her.
Yeah. You did?
Uh-huh.
Right.
No, Amanda, it was 2009. 2011 is when you came to my wedding.
Ew, you're right.
Wow. Congratulations on 9 years.
Right. No.
So Amanda,
our 9 years, Jen, our 9 years.
Yeah. Oh, right. Not my marriage. Amanda and I lasted longer than my marriage for sure.
I have 10 things to say to that. I'm going to keep them all to myself. Right? That's not, well, I'll keep them all to myself. So Amanda, you called Jen to be your mentor. Mm-hmm. So you were the financial badass that was looking for the green badass, I guess.
I was looking for the email growth expert. Jen was in all the magazines for having grown Ideal Bite to 900,000 subscribers. And I knew that the best way to build a revenue model for a media company was email. And so I'd been studying email for years and years and years, and it wasn't until I had the finance realization that I plugged it into the email model. And I was born overconfident, and I also had learned to code at a young age. And so I thought that I was going to get my email list to like 50,000 in the first year, and it didn't come anywhere close to like 4,000. And so I was like, what am I not understanding here? And so I called Jen and said, will you please help me build Daily Worth's email subscriber list? And she was like, I'm busy. I'm on vacation. I don't know if I'm going to help you. So that was fun. That was how our relationship began.
And then how long did it take before, Jen, you were like, you know what, I'm going to connect with this woman? And
well, I mean, Amanda is incredibly like persistent. And so first of all, who cold calls anybody in this day and age? She did. And I was like, what is this? You know, I forget what you had, a 917 number, keep calling. And I was literally like driving up the California coast, trying to take a vacation after a pretty gnarly year. And then Amanda was like, hey, this is Amanda and we're going to work together. And I'm like, what? First of all, how did you get my number? Second of all, I don't even know who you are. And da, 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 da. So it was like very endearing as much as it was kind of shocking. And then she was just like, I have this company. It's very much like Ideal Bite. It has the same business model. And, you know, it already has a few thousand subscribers. And I was like, great. Well, after how long? She's like, a year. And I'm like, that actually stinks. You should be much higher. And if you do, because I was trying to get rid of her, right? So I was like, if you do these 3 things, then you will be able to increase your email list. But I mean, honestly, I thought no one can just hear my advice and go and do it. And I was like, and if you can get your subscriber list up to, I forgot the number, but it was 40,000. You know, in X amount of time, then call me back. And like almost to the day she did. And she's like, I did it. Now will you work with me? And I was like, yes.
Amazing. Well, you know, having spent that time at Overstock and we built that email list, that's impressive. That's impressive. There's not a real easy way to do it. So if you have 3 steps, I'm going to be calling you later too and getting those 3 steps.
Perfect.
And those were, you know, we think about how we interact digitally with consumers or people or customers today. And email is definitely one form, but back in 2009 and early 11, it was very, you know, people think of social media right now, like everybody can reach out on social media. And those were early days, you know, Twitter hit in 2009. Facebook was just starting to come out. I don't even know where, I mean, and you think Instagram, how much later that was, but email was definitely the key back in those years.
And then quickly thereafter, people were so excited to proclaim that email was dead. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember thinking that myself. I was thinking, oh my gosh, email is going to be, we've got to get these other channels going quickly because email is going to fade away. And I was really wrong.
Yep. And we actually, you know, we'll do some, you know, seminars for people to help them understand what we teach and why. And we have basically a slide on that, you know, and it's like, here's the thing. Social media is done by algorithms. It's very random. It's certainly overrun. It's chaotic. And email is a sacred place. We now understand email management in terms of like who we invite into our inbox. We still read it. I'll give you all $1,000 if you didn't look at email this morning, probably
3 times.
3 times. Yeah. And so it's now the game has, and you can't just buy a list in terms of an email list and think that people are going to like be like, whoa, yay, I have an unexpected email. No, you have to actually earn their trust and be invited in. And once you're invited in, that's the beginning of a relationship. Just like if a neighbor knocked on the door with cookies, right? Like, hey, let's get to know one another. And so that's what we teach.
And did you find after you decided you'd hold hands with Amanda that she started teaching you a lot?
Oh, for sure. We call her the Amandroid. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, that's a great name.
Isn't it? Because you heard her that she's been coding her whole life. And like when she told me that at first, I was like, whatever. And then, you know, because people always have like my whole life, I did this. And then all of a sudden, like on our first like week of Hire You, I woke up after a weekend and she was like, Jen, go look at our website. And it was like fully built and, you know, operationalized. And, you know, and she had Amandroided our first website. So yeah, it's, but she taught me also, we're very yin yang. I mean, Amanda is the science, I'm the art. And, but we have that Venn diagram overlap. I don't know, Amanda, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I have like no art. But you know, it's funny because I just remember back to when you first let me hire you for $1 gazillion to be my coach. And on our first call, we got on because I was like, why am I not growing more? And Jen's response was, well, your brand sucks, your content sucks, everything sucks. We're starting over. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Don't I sound like a peach?
Beautiful. And I was kind of flabbergasted because I couldn't even see what she saw. And that's why we make a great partnership. Because like, you know, when we decide what color we're making something, I'm like, I don't care, just whatever, Jen, that's so your area. But it takes those two things coming together for machines to really grow.
So how long did you guys work together where you had kind of hired her, or maybe she hired you for some things as well? We keep saying hire you, which is really interesting. Before you decided like, okay, we're good friends, I trust you, maybe we should think about a business together.
It was 10 years, really.
Wow.
Jen, it was a year ago. And, you know, after I sold Daily Worth, I had a dream that I was going to become CFO of the Resistance. I still don't know exactly what that means, but I left all worlds behind and I went over to politics 2 years ago and became the chief financial officer of Revolution Messaging, which was Bernie Sanders' agency in 2016. And after working on the Marianne Williamson campaign, I was like, all right, I gotta get out of politics. I'm exhausted. I cannot do this to myself and my children much longer. And I was like, I have a dream for helping movement builders scale. And who is the perfect partner but Jen, because she is the yin to my yang. And I think that each of us alone has a lot of superpowers, but together it's like this amalgamation of energy. And so I called Jen and asked her, I said, hey, what do you think? And that was the beginning. What's your memory of it, Jen?
Yeah, very much like that. You know, we worked together for about 3 years very solidly in building Daily Worth. And then she didn't keep paying me. I just became like an equity advisor. And then we just continued, you know, to circulate in each other's lives, and both professionally and personally. And then the stars aligned in early, you know, part of this year where Amanda like decided, yes, politics was too crazy. And I missed being in business for myself, quite frankly. There's a certain type that's an entrepreneur, right? So I had done basically consulting and rebranding and building things for other people. And I just missed doing it for myself. So I know if anybody knew what being an entrepreneur meant, it was also Amanda. And we're very, you know, while we're very different skill set wise and brain, like how we approach things, we're 100% aligned on, you know, politics and values. And so that makes it easy.
So one of you quoted, or maybe it was on the website, the Hire You website, the thrill for sure is to keep envisioning what can be and then have the guts to go for it and make it real. I think that quote is just amazingly inspiring. And due to your backgrounds, both of you, like even with Revolution Messaging, which I definitely want to get back to due to our, you know, the time in our political world. And then your commitment, Jen, to being green or teaching people to make small movements, which add to a huge movement. Mm-hmm. How, you know, what gave you the guts of the company? Like, how did you say, this is what it's going to be, and this is what our mission is going to be? So take it from there.
So it's a little bit like heady in that if you look at your best gift that you can give the world, like how can you move the needle in the quickest, most efficient way possible, right? And so for you, Stormy, it was probably like you can use your power, your superpowers in politics, right? Because the world certainly needs you there. Ours is like, wait a second. We've kind of been there, done that. We're two women that have built companies, raised venture capital, done all the things that have been supposedly impossible or, you know, very hard to do, and can come together and now give the next generation or wave of of social entrepreneurs, of impact entrepreneurs, our playbook, so that then we can basically like kind of sprinkle our secret sauce out
magic
in the world. Thank you. Out in the world. And so that would just have like this amplification effect. So our movement is kind of like the meta movements of movements, is we just want to spur as many good ideas to life as possible. Right. And a lot of entrepreneurs have a great notion of how to bust up the status quo, but don't necessarily have the support team and the just all of the resources that they need. And so we try to make that possible for them and help.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I think about when I had Daily Worth and it was 4,000 subscribers, and like how tragic if I hadn't been able to get that message out to over 1 million women, you know, who were able to make a massive cognitive shift in how they had agency over their money. I mean, that's personal power. And just think about all the entrepreneurs and the visionaries and the nonprofit leaders and the political campaigners who have this like passion and vision that that we want to have in the world, but they don't know how to scale it. And so that is like what breaks my heart. There's all these people who are living way below the radar simply because they don't know what Jen and I have been able to figure out over the last 20 years. So that's what we want to give to them.
And I think for even I'll include myself in the statement. It's like I can envision the multicolor rainbow elephant, but I have no idea how to eat it or how to build it or how to climb on it, but I can definitely see it. So would you say that maybe Hire You starts helping people develop a roadmap of what steps to take or what spices to put in their recipe?
For sure.
Yeah, we have 22 building blocks. Actually, it's literally like we took everything that we didn't realize we had formulated and put it into very specific concrete steps that as long as you follow, you see this complete transformation in the way someone presents themselves and the way they captivate and grow a platform.
So you were launching this in January 2020, right before the pandemic. Has that created additional roadblocks, or you just go back to your skills of being, we're going to go digital, we're going to push harder?
I mean, oddly enough, I think, again, the universe kind of rewards you when you're in the right place, and our sales increased. People were looking for things to do online.
That's fantastic.
Uh-huh.
That's fantastic. And then do you have any like case studies or a fun story to share without naming anybody? And, if something where, magic happened with those easy 22 steps or a handful of those 22 steps?
Yeah, Jen, do you want to take one?
Sure. And she doesn't care, but so she wouldn't care if we shared her name, but we'll just share the first name. Her name is Sarah, and she's a fisherwoman that lives in Alaska. And she came to us and was like, I know I need something. I don't know what it is. And I'm a little bit afraid of committing this time and money at this point. We've got the salmon that's going to be swimming in soon. And, I've got all these things to manage. And we basically were able to tell her that she was incredibly special in what she believed in and how she was doing it and the service she was offering to the world, but she wasn't capitalizing on it, right? And she was like, okay, I'll trust you because of your track record. Well, fast forward 3 months, and now she has received a fellowship for Tory Burch. She is now the voice of women of Alaska because she represents getting equal pay for equal work. She is known for her sustainability efforts because the way that they harvest fish the salmon is doing so with a respect for keeping the population at a healthy point, right? And then of course that all translates to just being incredibly proud about where you're buying your fish. And so we came up with her kind of, hashtag movement, which was know your fish, her woman, right? So it just took on a whole new zeitgeist. And from that place, then we helped her build, we call it a lead magnet, right? That's basically like this gift that you give somebody in order to join your email list. And we are very diligent about not kind of hammering people over the head with these like, but wait, there's more. We're like, let's make impact first. So even if the person never buys from you, that's okay. You're here to be of service, to educate them. And you have a great way of doing that now with your email list. So you can help them understand, the value of sustainably caught fishing, or the health benefits in salmon from Copper River. And then, by the way, we have a fresh catch in. Click here if you like.
My home studio just fell. If you heard that noise. So I love that message because you don't have to be massive to make a difference.
That's right.
You can be in your vertical, just like Sarah, in her vertical, in her passion, and then the butterfly effect of that literally can be so powerful, whether it's 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, 10 million people, because they each have a butterfly effect.
That's absolutely right. And when we say movement marketing, sometimes people get a little intimidated, like, well, I'm not ready to start like a Black Lives Matters or a Me Too, right? That's not really what we mean by movement marketing. We teach the methodology of basically hooking into an existing movement and carving out your own unique slice, kind of how you described it, your niche. And so that's part of our foundational, building blocks in order to get going.
I think women or men, whoever's listening right now, can find, as I have been reinventing myself for the past 4 years, maybe since I was born, but definitely the past 4 years. It is interesting when you look at the rainbow elephant and say, what color do you want to be today? So it sounds like you might help people hone that in as well, as to like, you have all these ideas, but the benefits of eating fish from the Copper River may be the one that you focus on to start beginning to get the rest of those out.
And there's actually, I'll just share another case study with you real fast. There's an artist, a chant artist named David Newman. He's quite well known, who had a very successful concert performance career. If you don't know what kirtan is, it's kind of like Om when you go to yoga, but it's the Sanskrit music that is the expanded version of that. And when he came to us, he was looking to build his email list in order to sustain his concert performing tour. But in March, obviously, his entire career came crashing to a halt. And so what we did with him, and this I really credit Jen with, I remember the night so clearly that we were on this call, was what happens to so many do-gooders or change makers is they're preaching to the choir, which means he was so afraid to alter his message because he didn't want the kirtan community to see him as diluting or selling out or any of those things. But what we do and what I remember Jen doing with David so powerfully was showing how when you tap into the curious, not the choir, not the already converted, and you speak to them in a way that resonates and in a way that is accessible to them, then you grow in a completely new, different way. And yes, you are going to lose some people in your choir, but that's what it means to be a movement builder, is really expanding who it is you're speaking to, because we oftentimes speak to those who look like us and already think like us, because that's our comfort zone.
I completely understand that, having been an advocate in the cannabis community. It was a group of people. We just kept talking to each other. And then it was like, wait a minute, how many million of people are out there? And it was the rest of them, right? It was everybody else was out there, not, learning what we had learned, or we weren't sharing with the right audience for sure. But I want to take that moment and pivot just a little bit for a second to Amanda with politics and revolution messaging. This was a revolution when you think of Bernie Sanders and some of the digital. I think, Obama did some of it, right? Started online, started talking to our youth, started talking to where the people were every day. But I think Bernie took it to another level. I really do. Because he did start a revolution. He absolutely changed the conversation in ways that had not been done before on a massive scale. And then you also worked for Marianne Williamson in, I think it was it all fundraising digitally?
It was all of her digital fundraising
and it was successful.
Yeah.
And people started responding there. You started changing politics just a little bit.
Yeah.
So can we just, I mean, that whole experience I find fascinating. And I don't know if you guys both know, but I'm running for the House of Representatives in Utah right now as a Democrat, which is an extremely red state. So when we talk about change, you know, my voters, the constituents are very conservative. And, you know, I see myself somewhere in the middle on many things. But it's also disturbing that people vote party and not person.
Mm-hmm.
So just talking about getting that message out to people that weren't listening before.
Yeah. Is that a question?
It's kind of a statement soapbox question, but yes.
It's a rhetorical platform to springboard from.
Yes.
Well, I joined Revolution Messaging after they had a publicity crisis related to a Me Too incident. And they were in trouble, and they had about 150 campaigns on their platform, on their text messaging platform, which is about 50% of political fundraising at the presidential and often Senate level. I'm not sure if you're doing any mobile messaging. And I joked that I was the resident capitalist among them.
Right.
And I came in because, you know, I was thinking, all right, I've been through startups, I've been through acquisitions, I've been through hell. And I had the blessing of becoming close friends with Keegan Gudis, one of the partners and the head of advertising. And he was confiding in me in the real struggles of the company. I'm like, oh my God, if Revolution Messaging goes under, that's 150 campaigns that lose half their fundraising. I was like, I'm not going to sleep until I know that, you know. And so basically my job was to come in and stabilize the company. And we did that, which was really one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of. But then, you know, because we were Revolution Messaging and because they didn't want to work with Bernie again, we had all the presidential candidates coming to us. So I'm the only member of the partner team that wasn't there in 2016. So I'm getting into all these like amazing meetings with candidates, and I have no credential to be there, but I'm very proud of myself for having gotten into those rooms and those conversations. And you know, it's really interesting in retrospect. I actually turned Yang away, which is it was February. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and other things. And then when Marianne came to our door, I was like, I just left the new agey, you know, empowerment space to go into politics. I'm not working for Marianne Williamson. That's not why I got into it. But after talking to her and after seeing her platform and being a closeted pacifist myself, and all sorts of other things, and just hearing that woman speak, oh my God. I mean, what a gifted orator and thinker. And because of my background in, you know, transformational thinking, which is a lot of what Daily Worth was, I spoke her language as well. And so I was able to jump in, and ultimately we sold Revolution Messaging. That was part of how we saved it. And then she said, all right, Amanda, you're coming with me. And so there off I went, and was basically on the other side of the phone 24/7 for 8 months.
And I want people to understand, like, running for office. So Marianne didn't make it to the finals, but she changed the conversation. And it kind of plays into Hire You as well, because people need to understand, listening, sitting at home, wondering, complaining about politics, which I found myself doing. You can change the conversation just by raising your hand and getting in there. And that's what Marianne has done. She continues to do it. She's working towards it. And so her campaign to me is a win because of that. You know,
we exceeded all of our expectations. We didn't exceed Marianne's expectations. Marianne was absolutely intent on landing in the White House. But, you know, for those of us who have a more multi-dimensional view of things, you know, we were shocked on some days at where we were getting to.
Yeah. And it's so important. It's important for women to see that. And she's, you know, continued to speak her truth, even if it wasn't the popular or the most mainstream messaging.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of us identified with that. And so I now follow her on Twitter.
Yeah, isn't she amazing on Twitter? She's incredible on Twitter.
She really is.
Yeah.
So I think that those are the wins, and people need to remember that. You know, before I jumped in, it was a lot about, you know, I do the math. This has been a 65% Republican zip code, 65% historically for at least a decade. But the ability to jump in, change the messaging, Find My Hire Me, has been a really interesting thing. And it's also quite brutal. So I look at the punches that Marianne has taken. And then as I get these punches in this little tiny zip code, I just think, dang, there's some massive strength going on when someone jumps in at that level. So, but her passion and fearlessness, you guys both have this passion and fearlessness. Even though it sounds like a lot of your risks are calculated, they're both complete risks.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is risky in and of itself, right? There's no paycheck. It's ebb and flow.
Yeah.
But you're touching on something that's important, I think, for your listeners and people in general, which is just shifting the conversation is a value. I mean, not if you're just going to not be researched and just come, at it with acrimony, but shifting the conversation is super valuable. And to be a movement builder or a leader, a change maker, all those things, you don't even have to be an extrovert, but you need to be able to have a little bit of, chutzpah to stand in your opinion and be able to back it up and to be persuasive. So you can still do that with digital media and email. A lot of people that aren't extroverts are really good thinkers and writers, right? So then that's how they can get their messaging out. But if you aren't willing to take a stand, that's when we say this might not be for you, right? Because you'll always have your haters. And in fact, we say if you don't, you're doing something wrong because you're just like Melba toast. Like,
right. 100% approval rating is not the best thing ever. Like that means you probably aren't standing for much. So the extroverts and the introverts, you think about that now. You brought up a good point, because if you're an introvert, you still have a message, you still stand for something. And our digital age allows us to connect via email, via hashtag, via social media. But it's, you're no longer an introvert. You don't have to say a word, but you can connect with millions of people digitally. And I think Hire You is another plug for people listening that think nobody's going to care. Somebody's going to care.
Oh, they care. They absolutely care.
Yeah. And Amanda didn't, you guys went down another path with the David Newman example with the Chant Curious, but like now, he was afraid of kind of offending his base, so to speak, and now realizes how wonderful it is to be able to affect that many more people with something that would be comparable to the positive effects of, say, meditation for people that can't meditate or sit still, or they might need a more, kind of active form of meditation. And so his list Amanda has the most recent stats, but he went from, oh my gosh, I'm out of business, to holy moly, I have a new business and it's invigorating.
It's paying on me. He replaced all of his income within 3 months of completing work with us. I know that was, and I know even Jen and I are stunned at the results
we're like,
from that one.
Can we do that
Sometimes
I'll meditate. I'll do it.
Yeah, right.
So I brought up the political side. One, we're on Liberty Lunch, but two, I think it is important for people as we start deciding, what we really stand for. And I feel like this election is forcing people internally. COVID has us home more than we would be. So we are more quiet in our mind. And I think that's why David's taken off, as he's actually extremely needed right now. But we are, myself included, defining who I am, getting a little more solid on what I stand for. But what do you guys think about this climate? And I'll start with you, Amanda. It's pretty volatile.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think, other than Hire You and my kids, I don't really think about anything else. So how long do we, let me be as succinct and relevant as possible. I met Keegan and the Revolution messaging folks at a conference in Greece that's all about socialist democracy that I've been going to for 7 years. And the thing that I've appreciated most about learning from the Europeans is it's not anti-capitalist. It's about layering social policy on top of capitalism so that the power structure doesn't run you over. And it's about a basic part of decency. I think the future of this country really has to create this distinction or a rebrand, which I think is what the Justice Democrats have tried to do, of what the Europeans have implemented, because I think that the libertarian kind of lift yourself up by your bootstraps is just, it's over. And so because that whole rugged individualism era is over, that we're either going to go in a really dark direction or we're going to go in a light direction. And that thing that is holding us back from that is being so afraid of, you know, baseline government safety nets that are just logical. So I don't know if that was succinct enough, but
that was absolutely succinct. And it was like, I'm going to replay that. You should get on Hire You, this new business I know about. And that's a message that needs to be shared. It was absolutely beautifully said. How about you, Jen? You watching this stuff? You thinking it's crazy? You know,
well, how can you not? You know, I have a almost, I'd say, very annoying approach of branding, because I think of everything as a first impression and not wanting to turn off certain people that could be in your target audience and all of those things. But I have dropped that in this case to make sure that people know that we are absolutely about preserving our democracy, and that we are in the precipice of a very great or dangerous time, right? And oftentimes in our email communications, we'll weave in things like, don't be scared, because, you know, we are cracked open, but that's where the light can come in. That's where we need you. And so, you know, as much as we could absolutely wallow and hide in the, oh my gosh, how bad can it get? I mean, if you're not paying attention, so, you know, if you're not scared, then you're not paying attention, right? So there's all of that. But at the same time, it's like, there was such an undercurrent, and it was hidden, and it was a dark, you know, underbelly of things. And so now we know, like, who's a racist, who's a bigot, who's a misogynist, right? Like, yeah. Our president has made it okay to come out and to show that. Okay, good. So now it's more clear what we're dealing with. I would much rather deal with the problem in knowing exactly what it is than just kind of guess and hope that everything's going to be okay.
That's pretty well said too. So I've been saying, you know, our country is young. We're 240 years old, and it's a beautiful country. Like, I think America's pretty great already. But we were built, you know, when you read our Constitution, I'm not sure the word woman is in there and is in an empowering form. It was really founded with men, and there were restrictions on people of color. And so I feel 240 years later, it's time for that underbelly and that current to come up. And exactly, once you start talking about it and gets a little bit of sunlight in there, just a little bit of sunshine on it, it'll tend to blow up and blossom. So while it may be disruptive, and so were the 60s, and, you know, there's so many things that have been disruptive, we still have created an amazing country where we are allowing and evolving to be more equitable socially. And I think that's really it right now, is socially having women, you know, we're 240 years old. We women have been voting 100 years, not even 50%.
That's right.
So there's in another, 80 years or something, when we hit that 50%, we can talk about a little bit more, you know, maybe the underbelly will be a little calmer.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't take that long.
Right.
We can give you insight into the trenches here in terms of what's bubbling up from an entrepreneur standpoint. I mean, we definitely think that, you know, entrepreneurship is a bottom up solution in case the top down is not working for some. And so, and again, like, all type of honor and credit for you going in and fighting the good fight up there, right? Like,
hardest thing I've ever done.
Peace out, no way. So, but what is really interesting, Stormy, is about 50% of all of our students that come in for our training program called Market Your Movement are either women or feminists, men that are feminists, that are looking to somehow change the patriarchal system that has basically been set up for us to fail. And they're doing it in all of these different ways. And it is so inspiring and chill bump getting.
I just got the chills. I was just going to say that actually.
You know, and so we have this bird's eye view now of like people coming to this realization that like, oh, I get it. I can't win a game that was built for me to fail. Let's change the game. Right?
Yes.
And we're seeing all these amazing people, feminists, that are like using their brain and seeing all the gaps and how to actually solve for that. Right. So it's pretty cool.
I'm grateful for that. And that's really good news. I think even though there's a divide, it's definitely shrinking. And I appreciate you both talking about it, because to me, I do feel like it's a volatile time, and I don't want to hate my neighbor, and I don't want to be hated by my neighbor. And I never thought that by celebrating participation into politics that I would be hated by my neighbors. Never thought I'd be called names for running for office. And anyone out there that is considering it, I encourage you to do it. If you simply consider it, you're qualified. Your qualifications are this: you're a U.S. citizen. You are a U.S. citizen. You have a right to start creating our laws. You have a right to be on any hill in any state, and even that serves our nation. So when you think that you don't look like the people on the hill, that's exactly why you should raise your hand and get your ass up there, or at least try and pave the path for other people who never thought they'd do it. Because now I know, having been in this space, it is needed more than anyone can imagine. And I give that message to whatever side of the aisle you are on, because if we have to go mentally battle to change the way our country runs, then let's go do it. But I definitely don't want to do it physically, even though, you know, that part of the threats come at you. It's insanity, ladies. Insanity.
Yeah. And again, you're amazing for doing what you're doing. And we've experienced it on a smaller level, you know, and for example, with me taking a stand on light green, which meant, you know, you don't have to bike to work. We were kind of hated by the more militant green people, right? They're like, how dare you recommend that you can eat meat? I'm like, sure, like make it sustainable and organic, and don't expect the whole world to go vegetarian. But we got hate mail and even a death threat from vegans for that, right? So this is a small, silly example for what you're talking about for me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing it. It's just been recently where I'm like, my goodness, I'm feeling there's no reason anyone should feel beat up for participating in our political system ever.
No.
But I want to thank you guys for empowering people, because that's what's needed, the confidence and the empowerment at a level that we can all relate to, the beginning, that first step, which is so hard. And that it doesn't have anything to do with politics. It can have to do with dog grooming. It can do with landscaping, you know, but the idea that you are creating a platform with Hire You that anyone can come to and start defining who they are, what they stand for, and whatever their passions might be. So I want to give you guys the opportunity to tell us where we can find you, both individually as well as your businesses. Amanda, where can we follow you online? Can we?
Yeah, find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, all as Amanda Steinberg. I got it. I got there first before all the other Amanda Steinbergs.
Good job.
Thank you. And for anyone who is looking to start building their email list as a movement builder, I recommend that you go to hireyou.com/grow.
Awesome. And there is where you'll get your free gifts from us.
I'm going to take that.
Yes. That's where you'll get your, sorry, go ahead, Jen. And then you can introduce yourself. You can explain, you can put the end on what I
Where will we find you, Jen?
Oh, mostly just at Jen Boulden. Luckily, a lot of people don't have my name. So that's JenBoulden. And I say that 92% of everything that we're doing right now is energy put into our business at Hire You. And so that's it's at _ Hire You, HIGHERU, as in the letter U, like university. So thank you, Stormy, so much for giving us the opportunity to connect with all of your listeners. And we love you. And if we were in Utah, we'd vote for you.
I wish you were in Utah. I wish you were in Utah. Well, I want to again just reiterate the power of these two women and how they're making these subtle changes by touching each of us individually, or having the opportunity for you to be touched individually by them, and by turn making the world a better place, and not just everybody's world, but your world too. I want to thank everybody for listening today. I hope you ladies will come back post-election and post me signing up for Hire You, utilizing the services, and then getting some financial help with Amanda Steinberg during this violent stock market. Thanks everybody for listening to Lunch with Stormy. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening on today, and give us a 5-star rating, because that's what we like to eat. Thank you so much. And until next time, do good in the world.